To the stream. I am obviously Spicy2, also known as Milo. I'm welcomed by a great guest tonight, former Beastcoast player and former undefeated Challengers League player, Mr. B. Introduce yourself if from the people that don't really keep up with your career so far.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mr. B. I'm a North American player. I've kind of been playing competitive Siege for 8 years now, and you might know me. I won the previous Challenger League back in a long time ago now, like 2021, 2022. I think probably 2022, 23, something around there. Undefeated, and then I went on to play for Beastcoast, getting a fourth place finish and then a not so desirable ninth place. I'm now kind of running back with Revelations right now. We're 2-0 in the new Challenger League and hoping to get a new spot in Pro League.
Obviously, you've had a great. It's been a long career for someone that is still very young and still able to keep going at such a high level. But first of all, we're going to start at the bottom, at the start of your career. What really made you want to pursue esports as a job, and why? What did Siege really draw you into it?
Well, so I originally kind of not got in esports, but got interested in esports through CS:GO. I basically the big thing for me growing up is I saw my dad go into the office every day, come back, he's a fucking miserable. Oh god, dude, back from the office, and I'm like, okay, anything but that, anything but that is the goal. So I found out about esports. I was like, this is awesome. I could do this, right? And sitting there as a silver CS:GO player, I'm like, I can do this. This is it. But here we are, 12 years later or whatever.
Yeah, Rainbow Six Siege.
Um,
Obviously, you're a top player in the end. Obviously, only two stages through Pro League so far, but you can definitely make your way back up to it.
of
But
course.
obviously, you're in the start of your career, though. What I've seen, your first big win was, at least what I could find from Wikipedia, was ESA Spring 2020. So I'll be racking your memory here. But I saw that you played with a
Oh
certain.
goodness.
I saw that you played with a certain person named JJ Bullsack on Team Valk. I don't know how well you'll be able to remember this, but how was it?
Yes.
How was it teaming with him back then compared to obviously recently when you teamed with him in Crucible?
So it was a very short stint, and we were obviously much less developed players right then. I think we might have still been. No, I don't think. I think he had a higher pitch voice. I probably did too, but yeah, we were not quite squeakers at that point, but still definitely uh, younger. And he was interesting to play with back then, but because we both kind of hadn't developed our styles, it was actually probably easier then than it was more recently. Um, Teaming with him more recently, the big thing for me is obviously I made Pro League, Poison had kind of pseudo made Pro League, and then JJ hadn't.
Hmm.
And we were kind of the three growing up, three IGLs that was competed against each other. I was like, I want JJ, to find success. So, I was like, I'm gonna buy in. I'm gonna try and do whatever I can to, make JJ successful. Um, and it didn't quite go as I had hoped. Honestly, less so to do with like results, but just people weren't on the same page, and I think part of it was just our me and JJ on the same team. What didn't work that great. It didn't make a lot of sense. You kind of had one voice is enough. One overarching voice is enough. And so when you're losing out on some firepower for that, it just kind of is a bit of a loss. And then I think also um, the fact that we are these two big voices, we would clash ideologically because now that we've been playing a lot longer, our styles have developed, and we both have very different ways that we approach the game. And obviously mine's the right way, but
I mean, everyone's always going to think their way is the right way, especially as an IGO, as you're the main command, you're the main tower of like the person that overlooks the entire team, making sure every single little bit of their soldiers is right. What drew you to the IGL position, and what made you really want to master that and hone your skills on that position?
Yeah, well, so I started out as an entry, if you can imagine. And I played on a team called Slaughterhouse. And we went to LAN event in Florida, and the IGL was Skiboza. Um, some OG players might recognize that name, but he was known as like the most toxic, awful human being you could play with. Um, and yeah, it was miserable. And I finally broke, and one scrim I was like, yeah, I'm done, and I just left mid scrim, and I went and joined the academy team because I just didn't want to play with Skioza, and I was like, yeah, I'm an IGL because I can do your job better than you can, and at the time I couldn't, but I thought I could, and that the big thing for me kind of was learning IGL, and I actually do sort of kind of recommend is I thought it was the best. From day one, I was like, I'm the fucking best. I know everything. And I think that confidence, even if it's wrong, mentality is really powerful. Because if you can get everyone else to buy into it, here's one thing I kind of preach on all my teams is that it doesn't matter what you do. If you do it together, it's probably going to work.
I mean,
right?
yeah.
Now, as you get to higher and higher levels, obviously, diminishing returns. But yeah.
I mean, a famous saying is "fake it till you make it." So you kind of just use that ideology. Obviously, confidence is always going. Confidence, it's not literally, but it's kind of like a drug. It always will make you play at your best ability. If I feel like I've always said this, if you go into a gunfight thinking there's a chance you're going to lose it, you're always going to lose that gunfight.
100%. Yeah. No, absolutely. I remember this would have been pre-stage 1 Beastcoast, or maybe it was before pre-stage 2, but we were scrimming Oxygen at the time with Newers, and Newers, he might be the most talented player I've ever played against, right? And I scrimmed a lot of international teams, all this. He beat me so bad in every fight. For the next like 2 weeks, I was just like, I'm just bad at the game. I just can't compete, He's just better. They're just better than me. I can't do it. Right? That's how badly he beat me. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with that whole, confidence. Confidence is key. Confidence is king.
Well, your first big win for your career, at least from what I saw on Wikipedia again, was Nerd Treat Gaming 2021 Summer with... I cannot read my own handwriting. But obviously with Snake against KC Pioneer, and it was you were against Diaz, Lucas, Gomez, Beastly, and Wimpy. First of all, how did it feel winning your first big sum of money in esports, and then also playing against players of that caliber?
That was awesome. Hold on, I'm realizing I actually have the trophy for that right here.
That's actually very cool.
This is it's a solid trophy. That's the trophy I got from that exact tournament, and but yeah, it was a big moment because especially for family and stuff, they're watching it and they finally see this and they see $2,000 suddenly hit the bank account. It's like, okay, wow, that's some serious money, right? When you're earning $50, $100 here and there, it's like, okay, this is something, but from a parent's perspective, it doesn't really matter. When you're suddenly talking about thousands, it's a little more substantial. But yeah, I think that was my big kind of I know what I'm doing now moment. I think prior to that and that team, I really just had always been forcing my playstyle into something it necessarily wasn't. And on that team, I really kind of figured out what I was good at and figured out how I could be useful. So yeah.
And after that, you moved on from that team, joining a team called... Oh no, you were still on Chess Club at that time. You moved on... It seemed like in your career, you moved off Chess Club, then joined back on Chess Club. But then you eventually picked up after winning T3 Scrims, which is a very interesting name for a tournament, by the way, T3 Scrims.
Yeah.
It confused me. But you eventually picked up a young future major winner named Gunner. I was wondering, obviously, when you picked him up, could you already see the potential in him?
No.
Was he not good?
No, he was fine. He was known as a very talented player, but he back then and even still to this day, his playstyle has revolved around a lot of rat plays. And especially at the time in that current meta, it was annoying to play around that on your team. Because at the time everyone's like, yeah, you gotta stay man up, play for executes, this kind of stuff. And you're sitting there and every single round he's like, yeah, I'm in this rat spot, and every team at the time is thoroughly droning the entire map, and he just gets droned, and then he gets cleared out, and then you're in a 45 or whatever. It's like, well, fuck. And even if he kills one, it's like, I don't really give a shit. I want to, win by
Yeah.
doing the right thing. And I think so. Yeah, I didn't love playing with him back then. He wasn't. He was by no means the worst player I played with. I also think as a he is a very 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 vocal player considering his position, which I like, but his vocality comes out through a lot of big picture decision making, which if you don't have the right balance with your IGL can cause problems, right? You got to kind of balance it out.
How have you
And especially
sorted out issues when, say, a player hasn't fully agreed with you? Has it always been this player needs to go, or have you sometimes been
no.
able to change their mind, mold them around, and get them to follow your ideals?
Yeah, 100%. I think every team you're gonna have a ton of disagreements. In fact, if your team isn't arguing with one another, you're probably gonna be a shitty team. I think you need people who are going to push back on you with your ideas and your ideals about things when they disagree in order to come to reach the pinnacle of each idea. At least for your skill level. And I think yeah, even if I just go to this current team, right? Like Mike disagrees with me all the fucking time. Oh my god, piece of shit. No, but yeah, we argue all the time about stuff. I think Asian, honestly, the big one on this team is me and Asian. We argue a lot about how we want to play the game, right? But it's really really important, and it's a huge factor for our success. Going into this team, right? I was still kind of figuring out some meta things, right? And I was like, yeah, I think Goyo, he's all right, but not that great. And Asian was like, no, we should be running Goyo every single round, basically. This operator is so good, right? And he convinced me, right? I'm like, yeah, Goyo's a fucking great op, right? And in the meta, he just fits super well right now.
I actually have a funny story about Mike W, which actually happened recently. I was around a friend of mine, and I may have had a little bit to drink, and you've
Yeah,
talked to me when I've had
good
a little
stuff.
bit to drink.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
for some reason, in my mind, drunk me thought it was smart to call Mike W. I still have no idea
Okay,
what
yeah,
I have no idea what I said to him. No idea. All I know is I messaged him afterwards saying, sorry for calling you in that state.
yeah. Okay, wow. Yeah, oh, I love joint calling Mike. Because he's such a he's an anchor, and you call him and he will make fun of you just enough but be nice to you as well, and that's honestly all you need when you're hitting somebody with a drunk call.
Oh, I completely
But
agree.
yeah, no, I yeah, I love drunk calling Mike. Oh my god, he's one of my go-tos.
You ever go? That's maybe a bit of a problem if you've got a go-to if you get drunk that often. But to be, I can't really speak, seeing
Well,
how I mean, it's the British
listen, I think
genes. It's the British genes.
yeah, it really is, and it's too much fun not to, right?
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. But
Yeah,
after
no, but
after a certain night, I do have to cut back a little bit before my birthday comes up.
oh no, for me it's so because so around tournaments I don't drink at all.
Mhm.
And right now, for instance, I'm doing no sugar, no caffeine, and no alcohol.
Mhm.
And so, but that means when I don't have tournaments, I'm like, I gotta make the most of this. I'm out with the boys, every single night. Yeah. So gets a little crazy sometimes.
To be fair, I probably should have had some caffeine before the stream because, let's just say, I'm a little bit tired, but I'm gonna soldier through it. But we'll move on, obviously, to your first CL season where you went under a team called Took the Kids with Tragical and TPA. First of all, how did you come up with that name?
I was, although I was the IGL on that team, I wasn't really the leader slash creator. That was TPA, and yeah, I think it was a weird team, and we had some weird fellas. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into everything, but there was some fucked up shit that went on in that team, which is a big part of the reason why the next season we were called reality TV. We're like, yeah, there's nowhere else could this shit happen but reality TV. Yeah, during that off season between Took the Kids and reality TV, Uh, I I wanted to get rid of Tragical and Not Nice. And or no, it was no, I wanted to get rid of Tragical and Trist. That was it. And then so yeah, we dropped both of them. Okay? And then Not Nice, Tragical, and TPA decided, hey, they were gonna actually take the team instead. And they were gonna do it. And then they did one scrim without me, and they said, yeah, this isn't gonna work. And immediately backed out. And I built back the team with Trist and then our sub Packer, who you may now know on
I'll be honest, I
Cloud9.
never heard of that guy. Who's Packer?
Yeah, he's a loser. Hate him.
Obviously, but my main question is that how did it actually feel taking that step up from obviously playing these T3 to T4 tournaments to finally making it into the big time, into the T2 tournament?
Well, so it all kind of happened in one foul swoop. I went from kind of obviously I had the stint on Chess Club where I'd had a lot of success, but really being not nobody, but the known as a very middling to like not so great tier 3 player, just suddenly being in tier 2. He's like all of a sudden everyone's like, wow, how'd this guy make it? Kind of thing, and then shooting up through the ranks of tier 2 very quickly as well. And here's what I'll say: I definitely improved in tier 2, absolutely, but um, I think that I didn't improve as much as like I could have been in tier 3 or sorry tier 2, a long time prior, right? I think tier 2 at that time was quite weak. I think, yeah, I think that generation of tier 2 was very weak, and I think that generation of tier 2 where I kind of played in, and like slightly more recently, like I would say this last like 2 years, it's kind of been a golden generation of these kind of up and comers. You've got your Gunners, your Gavins, your Packers, think of like half of the current pro players. They're all within the last 1-2 years. All the players I kind of grew up with. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I had it hard. All the players I was competing against were kind of goated, and anybody who's kind of old now had it easy.
I mean, fair enough. Obviously, before we get on to the juicy talk about that reality TV team, I do have 3 questions from a former teammate of yours, and he told me to specifically tell you that they are from him. So, Alex PRS,
Okay.
Alex PRS
Oh,
asks, first of all, what would you do for 2,000 USD?
oh, dude. So this was okay on our last team. Loyalty was scarce. It was the gayest team I've ever been on, in a really good way. Yeah, it was, and the most fun team I've ever been on. Yeah, every single second of that team was just like, people calling each other babe, and like, yo, babe, can you come beat this angle? Let me double up here real quick, that kind of shit. Yeah, and there was a question that we had go around, and I think I was the one that started it, and it's how much money would it take for you to suck a dick? And I think $2,000 is a very reasonable number, Yeah. I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying, it would take some strong consideration at that number.
Hey, 2K is a lot of money. Like, a lot of people would. I think
That's what I'm saying.
people would do it for less. That's all I'm saying. People would do it for less.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. No, and I think people are afraid to jump on that grenade, but people say $20 is $20. $2,000. Now that's a real something.
That's definitely. And his next question was, what's more possible, Zim showing up for scrims or pigs flying?
Okay, so Zim or Carter is a current tier 2 player, tier 2, I think.
He's on
I think
Blackbeard Gaming, right?
team.
I think he's on Blackbeard
Is he?
Gaming.
Did I play against him last week?
He's with Eli Hud.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Okay, so we beat his ass last week. Okay, cool. Um, yeah. So he was previously on our team when we wanted to do the previous element qualifiers, and he'd had some issues. But at the end of the day, we got through them, and we were going into the qualifiers, and like hours before the qualifier, I think it was like 8 hours prior to the qualifier starting, he's like, I'm leaving the team, right? And he's gone. And it's like, okay, you know what? It happens, whatever. We then I pick him up again onto this current roster as we were kind of prior to the Challenger League qualifiers. Um, and I think we replaced him with Kiru after he went MIA for 4 days straight. No messages, nothing, just like disappeared. And then he came back and he was like, "Yeah, I was like at the beach with some friends or something." I'm like, "What the fuck?" So yeah, he's definitely an interesting fella. I don't know if you can necessarily. He's for sure talented as well, but I don't know if you can make it with that kind of commitment.
Oh, he's
We'll
he's
see
he's
though.
nasty. To be fair, I'll admit this. He does love the Boshi a little bit. I'm pretty sure. I
Uh
remember.
huh.
I can't remember what game. I'm pretty sure it was a game I casted. He got like 13 kills with Boshi.
Sounds very very
It
possible.
was either him or
Well, seniors
Schmink.
hit him hard.
It was either him or Schmink. I could be mixing him up with Schmink, because Schmink's also
Yeah,
a little bit of Boshi crutch. But he's also
yeah, it
nasty
could
with
be
every
good.
other gun.
Yeah, he is very good individually, and this is I think from the thing I've noticed a lot of these kind of newer up and comers is it's a stark difference from when like I was in tier three. When I was tier three, everyone's like, yeah, you gotta work on your structure and do all this. Now everyone's like, nah, we're just running around shooting people, and you only start to get any of that structure when you get slightly higher level. Even like lower tier two, it's just people running around shooting guns, you know. Um, and I think you see that with like a lot of these M80X guys coming up, right? It's like they clearly are very talented, but they had no idea what the fuck they were doing until like 2 months ago. Um, and same with most of these tier three guys right now, kind of coming up. Obviously, still the old heads, but for the younger generation,
That's actually
it's
a
very
good point.
interesting to see.
I have noticed something with obviously your most recent teams since coming back. You do have obviously you don't seem to favor having support staff on the roster. Is there any reason you don't choose to maybe find a coach and have them help you out with the team, or do you just feel confident solo leading your team?
So I feel confident still leading my team. The only coach I've played under two coaches, and this is including not played. I'll say played, but some of it was like just for like tryouts. So it'd be like a trial period, like a week, right? Or like just like three scrims, you know. Um, and I have seen two coaches ever that I thought were not not just not bad, but like actually good. And that was Call Out and Fet. I think I in general, I think a lot of coaches are uh a little bit fraudulent just because they don't actually know how to play the game at all, and because of that, they aren't able to support their players properly. Actually, I'll say Gio as well. Gio, when he coached on LIS, was actually one of the best coaches I've worked with for very different reasons than every other coach, but I think he was actually phenomenal, and I wish he would get into coaching. Um, yeah, like like if we end up qualifying for Pro League, I'm going to ask Gio to coach our team. Kind of, that's how good he was. Um, but yeah, I think most coaches are a bit fraudulent and they don't really know what's going on, and because of that, they can't actually support their players in making like decent strategies or the more important part, which is actually like player and team development, right? The big thing that these kind of call out and vets do is we show up scrims, they have spreadsheets ready of like, hey, this is what every single individual player needs to work on. These are our team goals for today. Okay, we're gonna work on these, and then between maps, he's going over, he's talking to us, like, okay, these are the problems. This is what we need to work on, right? And he's able to be helpful without being intrusive. Um, and his advice actually is meaning. I remember when we were trying out Fet, there was a team that was just lurking every single round. They were just playing lots of lurks. It was during like when Knock was really popular and all this. So they were just playing super lurking. We kind of didn't know what to do about it. We were kind of getting beaten out. And he's like, just run traps, guys. Just run like 5 trap ops, right? And so we just run a bunch of traps. And instantly we just start winning round after round after round after round, right? We didn't suddenly start playing better Siege. But like the fact that he's a coach is good enough that he can just give like 3 words and instantly we're winning more rounds, right? That's the difference to me between somebody who's like they can help, maybe make some strats, maybe do some analyst work, do whatever, versus a coach who's like, hey, this guy is going to be the difference between like us, being an okay team and like a great team, right? Callout's very similar, but his stuff is a lot more, I think, foundational.
And the final question from Alex PRS is, I spoke a little bit about this to you in Boston, but he asked, what is munting and how do you do the full experience?
Okay,
I,
so
I,
this is a yes. Do you know what munting is?
no, I was gonna say I remember again. I was drunk when we were speaking about this. I just don't know if it's TOS. That's the one thing I'm questioning.
Ooh, uh, the description might be TOS. Uh, it's yeah, it's it's probably TOS, but it's some fucked up shit basically. And the reason he's bringing it up is because I didn't really know what it is, and I was trying to figure it out talking to my mom. And because my team had been talking about, it, we'd been laughing about it, whatever. I don't listen. Me and my mom have a great relationship. Okay, we talk about everything, and so I'm like, okay, you know what? I gotta go to the source of my munting knowledge, which is Alex PRS, and I so I go and I asked him what munting is on the phone call with my mom there, and he gives a detailed explanation as to what munting is, and it was certainly a interesting experience with my mom right there.
This is one thing I've noticed about British families compared to American families. I feel like with British, their son and mothers act more like they're like just friends than they're actually like parents. Like I can insult my mother, and my like American friends be like, "What are
Oh,
you doing?"
100%. Yeah, it is weird, and I think, God, there's so much like American familial culture that I think is just so weird. Yeah, no, and my mom's, what's kind of weird about it is my mom's not even British. My mom's from Alabama. Um, but yeah, I just think my whole kind of family's culture has always been like, we drink together, we just act like normal people around each other. We don't, have some weird hierarchical system. Obviously, if when I was a kid, you gotta listen to your fucking parents, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes down just to the day to day, you can have fun with it. There's no reason to get too serious.
No, I completely agree. But obviously, like you said, obviously earlier on, going back to the Challenge League, you said TTK Sport, which was eventually turned into RTV.
Yeah.
For everyone obviously listening in, the roster was obviously you, Gaveni, Packer, Woos, and Trist for at least stage one, with Chupin as the coach. But after stage two, you decided to make some changes. Woos, Trist, and Chupin all were booted, either for reasons unknown, for at least for me.
Yeah.
Gitty, Tristan, and Fett were the ones coming in. Funny that you knocked out Trist for Tristan.
Yes, it is funny.
I
So
see. I always thought
so
they were the same person. I'll be
let me
honest.
let me go into some stuff with this. Yeah, no, they are not. One is a really, really nice and lovely kind of, flex support player who is really he's stakes duo. And then the other one is Tristan. And so after that second stage, Woos was thought to have um cancer, lung cancer, from having yeah, so he was thought to have lung cancer. Now, he didn't end up having lung cancer. He ended up having a really bad like infection because he breathed in some fungus uh in like a chemistry class or whatever. And he still had to have surgery and stuff and get it removed, but it wasn't life or death. But yeah, so he left and we were like, yeah, we'll support you, blah blah blah, but obviously, he had to focus on his health at the time. Um Chupon left as well. And then there was Trist, and I went, and we're sitting there with 4/5 of the roster. I'm like, we just got second place, I don't want to make a change. It was very unlike me. I'm normally always like, yeah, we can get better, we can better. But I was like, we should have won because we only didn't get first that season because I had a terrible match in the finals. I played horrifically. Um, yeah, it was like an awful match for me. I was really upset about it. And super apologetic. But I didn't want to get rid of Triss because, obviously super nice. He'd been great, and he was the only reason we were able to keep the roster spot in the second season. Yeah, because otherwise we would never had 3/5. And but I was like, hey, I think we don't do this. Gavin, but he's not very. He doesn't push for things.
No, he's and I've noticed this when playing rank with him. He's very nonchalant.
Quiet.
He doesn't really care a lot. He
Yes,
just does whatever he wants. He's very chill.
100%. But at the end of the day, he does actually care a lot, but he's just not
He doesn't
pushy
show
about
it.
And so yeah, and so he'd clearly spoken with Packer, and gone, I'm not playing another season with Trist. because Triss was a pretty low rated player, especially considering we're like a second place team. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I can keep Gavin and Packer, or I can keep Triss. I'm like, fuck, all right, well, Triss is gonna have to go. And it was definitely for the best. Although I love Tristan was a significantly better player. And so yeah, we pick up Tristan, we pick up Giddy, and we have that final stage of Challenger League.
Obviously, going on to that Challenger League, you called it. I think it was either. I'm pretty sure the post game interview. It's on your Twitter, obviously your pinned tweet. You called that you were going perfect, and indeed you did. You went perfect for an entire Challenger League series. It's never been done in Pro League. It's never been done in Challenger League. Even now, it hasn't been done. How did you do it? How was these 5 players and obviously the newest coach of FET be able to work together and make sure you guys did not lose a single game?
So we argued a lot for good reason. Me and Packer argued a shit ton, right? Packer is now a pretty vocal voice. He's actually somewhat of an IGL. Obviously learned from the best. That's why he's able to do anything. Okay. No, but but he's a very vocal player. He has a lot of ideas about the game, right? And so we argued a ton, and then Fet would help basically make us not fucking tear each other's throats out. And but the big thing is we sorted out our roster really early on, and so we had 3 months of practice, just full on double scrimming every single day, 7 days a week. Always at least 6, and if somebody couldn't make it for 1 day a week, which was rare, we would do 6. Otherwise, we do 7. Double scrimming every single day, and at a certain point when you do that, you just get good. And we started beating out pro teams, and all these pro teams were like, yeah, these guys are scrim players, whatever. They're obviously because they can't say that they're just less good than a Challenger League team. But we start fucking beating their asses, right? We're starting to win wagers against these teams because a lot of the teams, we'll do $20 wager a map or whatever, and it's we're starting to make money, things are starting to look good. And at a certain point when I'm sitting there and it's yeah, I'm beating out, Sonics, I'm beating out Dark Zero. Actually, Dark Zero we were always struggling against, but literally every team except Dark Zero we're pretty consistently outperforming them in scrims, right? I'm going, yeah, this Challenger League shit's about to be light work. Right? Every time we stopped wanting to book with Challenger League teams because it was too easy. Right? That's the kind of level we were starting to get to. And I think we just had a really good grasp on the meta. Fet had a super good grasp on the meta. That's, I think, one of his biggest traits is he's always been able to read the meta ahead of time. You see it on fucking the Manchester team as well with Beastcoast. Right? He's very good at it. And so yeah, we went in that Challenger League stage and we just absolutely stomped him. It was a bit of a shame that roster couldn't stick together. I would have loved to have done a bit more with that, but yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately that roster did not fall apart, but a lot of players got poached. Obviously, Gavin joined DZ, Fet joined, I'm pretty sure it was Mirage, and Packer joined Parabellum.
Yeah, I think so.
And Packer joined Parabellum. Yeah. Obviously, then you picked up Hat and Valor for Open Course, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if he was there for Open Course, but pretty sure you picked up Bio as well as coach.
Valor, I think, got switched out with Rice. Yeah, we got Bio as a coach.
Yeah, obviously, Rice then got switched out. Rice then went in for Valor right before SI quals. Was there a reason, after going through Open Quals, able to win Open Quals, make it to these SI quals, was there a reason you made that change so close to such an important opportunity?
The guy just left. He was like, yeah, I don't want to do this, I'm leaving. So yeah, I don't know, it was a very odd thing. We were all a bit surprised, but yeah, no, and I definitely think we were a bit worse with Rice, so that was a shame. I think we could have done a little more, although I would have really have loved to have played those qualifiers with Reality TV, the full original roster. I think that would have been really something special. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel if you did have that full roster, I don't want to, obviously, we can never see if it would have happened. I think there's definitely a very high likelihood you could have made SI with that roster.
100% we would have made it. 100% we would have made it. Not a doubt in my mind.
But obviously, during those quals anyway, you were able to beat SSG, which is still very impressive for a team from Challenger League, able to be a standing team, which then eventually made it to SI through those qualifiers. But obviously, you beat them in upper, then lost them in lower. What was the difference between the upper bracket and the lower bracket for you to win upper, then lose lower?
Honestly, I have no idea. I don't remember those
That's
games
fair.
that much. There was a lot going on at that time because obviously everyone's talking to pro teams, doing all these different things, right? And so it kind of sucks. I do wish there was much more of a uh transfer period in that, like, hey, you can't talk to players like in Challenger League or Pro League except for through these dates
Mhm.
because everybody does. And maybe it'll happen a little bit behind closed doors where people are like, hey, we're interested, but like there's teams just like trying out my players mid Challenger League season, trying out my players like day before qualifiers,
Mhm.
right? And it's like I can't sit here and be like, no, don't go try out for that Pro League team that's going to pay you money. You can completely keep playing with me, right? um and so yeah, I think it really screwed us over a lot, and it screwed me over a lot being kind of a staple tier 2 player to an extent. Because I think it's really just really it's quite shitty.
Yeah.
It's also shitty as a pro player because when you're sorting out rosters, um, the people with money always get the first pick, right? But we had what was it? We had a bunch of players we really wanted going into that like second stage on Beastcoast, for instance, and even the first stage on Beast. We had players who won on both stages, and we're sitting there and we're just like, yeah, we just can't get them. We just don't have money, right? Um, and that sucks. That really sucks. And I wish there was a little bit more of an even playing field because you can go and you'd be like, this organization sucks. They always put together terrible rosters, and it's like maybe, but you have organizations like M80 just putting in ungodly amounts of money. You can't expect to beat them. That's by the way why I make fun of M80 all the time is because they don't win despite putting all this money in.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it is not fair, right? Just straight up, it isn't fair, right? Like if you go to the Manchester roster, Fett had to give away the entirety of his salary in order to get the players he wanted on that Beast Coast roster, right? Fett was not getting paid during that period,
I
right? Now that's what I mean by like how good of a coach he is, man.
yeah. I didn't even know
Another
that.
bit of accolades. Yeah, but like, and this is to get the players who are dropped from other teams. So
Mhm.
clearly not that desirable. He's still
Yeah.
having to like give up his salary to even get anything. And I know how much those Beastco salaries were. They were a lot more than I was getting paid, right? So you have to imagine like,
Mhm.
there's levels to it.
Definitely. Obviously, going back to the Prime RTV, I want to touch a little bit on Gavini. Obviously, in my opinion, I think he is underrated as a player. But when you played with him back then,
100%.
how talented was he? Because obviously, he just seems like the fragger you always want on your team. He's able to make a play out of nothing.
So he is obviously very talented. I think, but here's what I will say. I think there are a lot of talented players out there. A lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot of talented players. And I think the biggest difference between a player like Gavin, obviously, now he's starting to actually show that he's above the rest, but that's because he's playing against the best players every single day, right? When you're playing on international stages all the time, you're playing against the best players in the world all the time, you just are going to rise that level, right? But the biggest thing that gets him to that level in the first place is like, there's two major things in my eyes. Number one is he listens. He listens to everything, right? If I tell him, hey, I need you to start asking to call for Tristan double up on you, right? The next round, he's sitting there, he's going, I need Tristan double up on me, right? He's calling for that. And then number two, he doesn't play like a fucking bitch, right? So many of these KDA piece of shit players, right? They are afraid to take gunfights because they could lose them, right? If I tell Gavin, hey, I need you to walk here, right? Gavin walks there. And you know what? Because of that, because he has a refrag on him, we end up winning the round a lot of the time, right? And I think that and like those two qualities together, right, in an actual team where all the parts are functioning, right, are so 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 effective. And I think um that's the biggest thing I see in so many of these players I kind of train is like the big difference between the players who I'm like, okay, this guy, I can work with and make this guy great versus the people who I'm like, I don't know, we'll see. They'll definitely be good, right? Is that difference of like, hey, this guy does what he needs to do and he improves off the information I tell him. Um, yeah, and that lack of fear. I think that lack of fear is massive as well.
Also, it's funny thing about obviously Packer being on obviously reality TV. Then he had the Maker stint. It does seem like obviously now he's finally looking like he's cementing himself in T1. But it did look like for a while he was the Grim Reaper of Tier 2 for quite a while. Do you think there's any reason why it took teams so long to finally realize the talent he could be?
Well, so it is a big problem for support players. Giddy has experienced the exact same thing, uh, and I have experienced the exact same thing, right? You have to think about coming out of that stage of Challenger League, and even, like the next, like all this stuff. I'm like a top-rated player in Challenger League, right? I've just gone undefeated. I can barely get a tryout, and the ones I can get, I'm losing out my spots consistently to fraggers, right? Because what these pro teams will do is every single time they will go and pick up a um they'll just pick up an entry and they'll move their fraggers to supports, right? Because pro league level players, most of them can play, most any role to an extent, right? And as the older players start to get their lower reaction time, less good gun skill, all that kind of stuff, they move them onto these support roles, and so it means that you're basically it's so impossibly difficult to get those roles, and then even further than that, as an IGL, right? You have to think every single team's decision making in terms of roster changes and everything is being made by their IGLs most of the time, right? Or at least leader positions. And so when you see that person sitting there and they're going, yeah, if I pick up this guy, we are going to be clashing, or this guy's going to take my job, or something like that, right? It's nobody wants to pick you up, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it becomes very challenging.
Yeah, I actually have obviously noticed that. Now you mention it, I've noticed a little bit more because obviously G2 did that quite a lot, where they picked up Virtue all the way back in 2020, and then recently he was dropped, but he was made onto support. Then Uno as well used to be a high level fragger, put on support.
Yeah,
It's just the nastier
it's
aim,
it,
and they can play everywhere.
exactly, and it's very consistent, this decision, because the big thing that they realized, and not realized, that they think is that these young players, that you really when you support players, you really want a lot of vocality, and you want them to have all the fundamentals down really really solid, even if you have to lose out a little bit, and that's really where you want veteran players, and it makes sense. I get that, but um I've never seen one of those players go to support and last it in the long run. Whereas the players who've come up on support, right? Look at like a Dream or something, right? They're still sitting there years later, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
going, "Yeah, this guy's fucking great."
Breeder, I think
I
Breeder
think,
as well is a good example. So I'm
yeah,
pretty sure he
Bride,
was support his
100%.
entire career and is still seen as one of the best
Exactly.
supports of all time.
Exactly. And I think there is that difference, right, between the best supports and the less good supports, right? And I think you can go and move your fragger to support, but that's really just like a coward's way out. Um, you know. I think if you want to relearn a different role, it takes a lot of time and effort, and I think people don't um, quite recognize that. And people see support as like just like an easier role, and I really don't think that's the case. Um, I think you can, statistically look good in support if like, or look okay on support as a fragger, but I don't think that means you're necessarily going to be bringing the same value.
Yeah, obviously, moving on, obviously, we're going to finally, you've been picked up by Beastcoast. And for stage one of 2023, how was it like finally making it to Pro League and being on an org? Were you nervous at all? Was there any pressure? And how was it finally being like officially part of like a big organization?
So I had tried out by this point on almost every single team. So I knew my competition very well, and I knew I was better than basically all of them. I knew
Hmm.
I could beat them out, right? The only player who I thought could compete with me, IGLing wise, in the league at that point, uh, was Geometrics or Geo, uh, and he wasn't even IGLing, right? So, but that's like, I my opinion on most of these IGLs. Um, that's kind of, so going in, I'm like, yeah, I can just beat these people, right? And so I'm going in with a roster that was formed 3 days prior to the first match, with players who were basically all unwanted, and obviously some players that we didn't even necessarily really want, but we kind of had, right? I think the biggest problem with that team was Hyper. I think he had come back a year later and didn't do the things you have to do to get good again. Um, right? Obviously, when he had stopped, he was a really talented player, but he came back, and it's not like he was sitting there, grinding to get better every day, focused, right? He came in and he's like, yeah, I am insanely good, right? I'm just coming back because I can't. I want to now, I didn't want to at that moment, right? And that's not the mentality you have. And I obviously recently come back, right? It's like,
Hmm.
no, I came back and I'm like, yeah, I am not good enough right now. Even still, I'm not good enough right now, right? But I will be good enough.
Hmm.
I will continue to, get better. Um, and I think that was the big thing for me on that team. And Paul or Hyper was so lackluster on the team. He was originally on entry for us, and weeks in we were moving him to support because he just couldn't do anything. And when you're saying an entry every single round, there's getting first picked, right? You're losing your first entry like every round. We just couldn't do anything. We moved to support, and it was still really rough, right? I think he was one of the lowest rated players in the entire league, right? Even despite coming in fourth place.
Hmm.
I genuinely do believe that stage, if we had had a different player, we would have won. Or not won, but we would have at least made it the major.
Hmm.
So I dislike Paul, um, because not I don't dislike people who are bad. I dislike people who are bad and can't have any recognition of that themselves. Um, being able to say, hey, I had a bad stage, or I need to get better, or hey, I'm rusty, whatever. But he was like, no, I am good enough. I'm insanely good, and the only reason I didn't actually perform super well is because you guys moved me off entry. And it's like, no, we moved you off entry because you were sucking fucking dick, right? Same when he got picked up to M80 like the next season, he completely shit the bed as well, right? It's like,
Hmm.
it's at a certain point you need to like recognize, hey, I need to do something. It is me. Um, so yeah.
I actually have a funny story about Hyper. I was allowed to be co-streaming the Element 4 Qualifier 1. Yeah, I was allowed to be co-streaming that, and I picked Hyper's team, which was at the time was him, Geo, Bryce, Epic. I
Yes.
don't fully remember the fifth. But as the tweet,
Yep.
since I did a funny for the first one. I said I was streaming because I streamed MAX for the first one. I clickbaited it, so I was streaming console pro players. I was like, how do I clickbait Hyper Geo and Center? I think it was actually. I said
Yeah, it
geometric.
was center.
It was Center, yeah. So I was like streaming geometric ex Bolo teammate and Hyper exploit teammate. He saw the
Nice,
tweet.
yeah.
He saw the tweet after the game, said, and commented underneath it saying, "Just saw this. Don't cast us again."
Dude. Oh, I fucking hate
He
that
f-
guy
he
so much.
followed me
Oh my
after it though. He
god.
did follow me after
Oh,
tweeting
I hate
for
that guy
commenting that.
so
He did follow me after commenting that, so
much.
I'll take the follow back. But I found it a funny tweet.
Dude.
I didn't cast him again, to be
Oh my
fair.
god. Yeah. Oh, I hate that guy so much. Oh. But yeah, I think yeah, like one of the best games ever I GL'd was that Sonics in the LCQ
Mhm.
game, and oh my god, he did so poorly. And every single round that we're losing, and it was a super close game, and we barely lost it. But every round I'm making like these flawless calls, and we're just losing, and it was so devastating for me just to see that, because normally when I lose, I'm like, I can be like, hey, I could have done this better, right? During the matches during the season, right? So like in like the playoffs, or yeah, the playoffs, right? There was like rounds I'm like, hey, I could like done this better, blah
Mhm.
blah. During that LTQ, that like final match against Sonics, I called out of my fucking mind. It's like perfect call after perfect call. So I was devastated, absolutely devastated from losing that game, and I would have. I swear to God, I would have fucking murdered Paul after that game if I had had the chance. Holy fuck, I was pissed.
So as he moving on to stage 2, Hyper then I'm pretty sure he stated he retired, which later found out wasn't true because he came back. And also you also
Yeah.
lost
Also,
Spiff.
we dropped him, but yeah.
And you also
Um.
lost Spiff, obviously. Pretty sure he joined Mirage at the time.
No, 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 no. We picked up Smith. We lost. We dropped vertical. Or
Oh, you
yeah, we
dropped
dropped
Vert. Yeah,
vertical.
drop Vert went to Mirage. Spiff joined. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yes.
And
So
then,
Vert was an interesting decision.
mhm.
I want to talk about that super quick
Yeah, yeah.
because I was against dropping Vert. Fett was like, we need to get rid of Vert, and he gave me a bunch of reasons, and I'm like, Fett, you've done me great all this time. I trust you. It was a mistake, a big fucking mistake. We just couldn't get another player on that same level. And other thing with that off season, Yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. We just
I
couldn't
mean,
get another player on the
that
line.
was going to be the question: was what do you think was the main reason that the team then went from, I'd say, a decently successful stage for your first stage in Pro League to then basically falling off a cliff?
Yeah, so I would say it is entirely my fault because of reverse.
Hmm.
I had, seen the guy. I thought he had a lot of potential, right? And I went, I've made a whole bunch of like players who are good, great, and I can do this reverse. We have a long off season here. I can do this, right? And we tried to get other players before. We really wanted Ashen. We weren't able to get him, right? We really wanted a couple other people. We weren't able to get them, but obviously just because we didn't have enough salary, and also we weren't as desirable.
Hmm.
Um, and so, that all happened, and I went, fuck it. We need to make a decision. I'm getting reverse, right? Really, we had a lot more time, and we should have spent that time because we could have gotten somebody else that was, more established and better. But I went, no, this guy's going to be great. I can make him something great. So we start scrimming, and every scrim is just horrendous. We were getting shit on. And I remember about a month later, Vet's like, hey, we could still try, although he was already contracted at the time, we could still ask Beastcoast if we could get rid of him and get another player. And I'm like, I just don't think Beastcoast will let us. Right? Beastcoast at the time was super monetarily constrained,
Hmm.
and there was. I did not like working with Beastcoast. There was between stage one and stage two, the whole team had wanted to leave Beastcoast. And we were like, yeah, we just want to go our separate ways. And Beastcoast wouldn't let us. They put us in contract jail. Even though a big part of our agreement with Beastcoast was like, hey, we're gonna have a renegotiation after 3 months, they were like, no, in the contract we signed, we didn't actually put that in there. So yeah, I do not fuck with Beastcoast. And I think all the management of that, if you ever see them anywhere else, I wouldn't fuck with that org either.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it was a bit fucked up that off season, and so I basically went with reverse and I went, yeah, I can make this guy great. But yeah, a month later, Fetzer's like, this guy sucks. We could get somebody else. And I'm like, I just don't think we're going to be able to at this point. We've already put a bunch of practice in. We're just going to make it work. We start going to the matches, and we were just getting shit on and shit on and shit on. And I'm like, and I give a shit about winning. I've
Hmm.
put my ego on the line to such an extent, right? I've like made this team my identity, and I begin to have like an ego death. Um, because I've obviously staked everything on this, and I've basically gone like, hey, I'm the fucking best, um, and it all just kind of collapsed in my face. I don't know. I it was all a bit something, and in the process, I was toxic to my teammates, and this, that, and the other. Um,
Right? Stuff happens, but in
yeah,
the end of the day, obviously, we move on from that. Unfortunately, had a poor placement, and then eventually ended up getting either. Did you leave or did you get dropped from Beast Coast?
I left. Well,
Okay.
so Vet wanted basically was given full control of the roster because he started
Hmm.
doing content. So Beast Coast being monetarily constrained was like, this is more valuable to us than like anything else. I don't give a
Hmm.
fuck about the team right now. Right? You could do whatever you want with the team. And so Vet dropped every player on the team, and he asked me. He said, "You can retrial for your spot if you'd like, and you can probably get the spot back. But you're obviously gonna have to retrial with this new roster, right?" And I said, "No, I don't care. Regardless of retrialing or not, I don't want to play. I need a break." Because I've been going kind of like non-stop, super hard. My entire life had been siege
Hmm.
for like 2 years at this point, right? Like, my family would want to do stuff, and I'd be like, no, I gotta play siege. I gotta be focused siege. Literally, 7 days a week, like every single week. It's at a certain point, along with this shitty season, I was just like, I just need to stop. I need to stop for a bit. Yeah, and I had just zero interest in playing the game, and I am super glad I took that break and made that decision.
Either this was before the break or maybe during it, but you also coached in E1 coaching, bringing back and reviving reality TV. I can't. I think there was an issue with
Yeah.
that. I can't fully remember what happened, but I remember
So
reading about it on Twitter. There was an issue with either
that
admins or
was
something.
between that was between stage one and stage two. And yeah, so I brought back reality TV as a roster with Tristan, Teddy, uh Emilio, who's now on JJ's team.
Hmm.
Um shoot. There's two other guys, and I can't remember the names right now, and I feel bad about it. But yeah, there were two other guys. And we're shitting on everyone in this qualifier, right? I've been coaching them for a while, and they're looking actually really solid. yeah, they're probably gonna go and challenge you. They're probably do really well. But I'm coaching them on stream, right? I'm just coaching them, right? And technically that's not allowed, but there's zero way for them to enforce it during Challenge League. Everyone does it, right? It's just like what happens. But they messaged me like, hey, we could see that you're doing this on stream, you know, stop that. So I stop, right? But and like you can still say like good job after rounds and this and the other.
Yeah.
So I then I move on to that basically, and I start saying like good job between rounds, and then like 3 minutes later they message me and they're like, you're banned from the league, right? You're suspended, and I'm like, what the fuck, right? Yeah, and this son of a bitch green tea, okay, basically uses the evidence from prior to the warning and is like, hey, we gave you a warning and we're getting rid of you, right? So I was fucking pissed. It became this whole thing, okay? I became a massive green tea hater because this guy just lied, right? He then, right, more recently, I want more drama.
This is
okay?
on LIS, wasn't it?
Yes, on LAS, the same admin, green tea, is in our voice call, and he doesn't unmute our coach during our timeout. So we're just sitting there waiting to be unmuted, going like, "Hey, our coach still muted. Our coach still muted." Right? He then doesn't unmute our coach. We don't get given our timeout, and they don't like give us another timeout or anything. And he then lies the admins again and says like, he couldn't hear us or something like that, or we weren't saying anything. And it's like, I fucking hate that guy. I genuinely hope he drops dead. Yeah. No, that shit. Oh god, that guy is awful. Dude, lying as an admin, like that guy should not have a job. That guy should not have a job. Yeah, that shit pissed me off. So yeah, that's what happened on that reality TV team.
All right. And then obviously, I think this, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong again. I think this was after stage 2. You then also played in Element 2 with Packstar's Disciples.
Yes.
And obviously, this is the first time, eventually, of many that you teamed with Mike W. How was he for the first time teaming with him back then?
Well, so I'd coached this team prior. They were called Outlast. And I really, really liked them. I thought they had a lot of potential, right? You see a lot of those members now on core, right? You see Mike, you see, a whole bunch of these members have now gone all around. Bay, I think Bay wasn't on this team at that point now, but he had been on this team, right? And I was just like playing for fun, basically. I obviously hadn't like completely given up at that point. I was like, hey, maybe I'll just win for easy because I'm really good now, right? But it was a little bit of delusion. So yeah, I went, I played, and we kind of got smoked. But it was fun, I was playing with people I liked.
Obviously, both you and JJ going 0-3 in that stage. It does seem like your two's careers seem a little bit connected. We'll continue going on to that later on, but obviously then after you played a little bit of Stage 1 calls before leaving NA to coach in APAC, coaching Daystar. Yep. What was the reasoning behind that, and why did you then decide to go forward with it?
Well, so I've been offered 2 options while I was during my break. Like as I was starting to because so I played on a team. We only did some scrims. We did like a month and a half of scrims back in March. It would have been Trist, Yams, Twist Yams. I know his name is in Challenger League right now, but it's hard. It's like another Y name, I think. And
You've?
Snake.
You've?
Yeah, you've. Twist. Or sorry, so Yams, Snake, Trist, and you've. And we were actually doing really well. I was playing really well at the time. But it was just scrim team, and I was in college, and my finals started coming up, and I was like, I'm just gonna go focus on my finals. But then during the summer, right, I planned to go backpacking, and I got given 2 offers. The first offer was to go to Saudi Arabia. And I got given the offer, and I looked at it, and I went, this could be really fun, but I'll have to cancel my backpacking trip. And their initial offer, I'm like, it's Saudi Arabia team, they're going to pay really well, right? I'm interested. So we go through the whole process, and they're like, yeah, we'll offer you $500 to come live in Saudi Arabia for a month. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to like cancel flights. I'm gonna have to do all this shit. And I'm like, yeah, that's just not happening. Eventually got up to like $1,000. They're like, yeah, we'll offer you $1,000 to do it for the month. And I'm like, Yeah, man. I'm sorry. I'm not coming to Saudi Arabia for $1,000. It would have been really cool if I didn't have this other stuff planned. I honestly might have just for the experience, but yeah. So I turned that down, but I did also get the Daystar thing, and I was like, yeah, I could just do that. It on the side, right, on top of doing other things in my life. The issue with it is that it was from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Hmm.
That so it completely fucked my sleep schedule, and uh, it was pretty rough. And eventually, as I was kind of starting to come back and going back to school, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna quit. I can't do that. Um, I can't do that while I'm,
Hmm.
you know, living my normal life. So yeah, but it was really fun coaching Daystar. I honestly think with APAC, it was interesting coaching them, but the big thing in my opinion is just they are a lot of people will always credit and be like, hey, APAC just plays really shitty playstyle,
Hmm.
right? And that's their issue. No. I think fundamentally their issue is they are just not good. Their talent is they have less talent right now and their talent is weaker and they have less ability to commit to the game and they have their like fundamentals in terms of teamwork is also a lot less good, right? Everything regarding them being like good as a team or as players is just less good, and
Hmm.
by a pretty significant margin. And that's why you see them play all these cheese strategies internationally, because that's the only way they can actually win rounds. Um, and I actually don't super blame them for that. I will say though that I don't think that has to be the way forever. I think we've seen EMEA become really good really quickly, right? I think a big part of that is how would I explain this? I think a big part of their lack of improvement has been their inability to uh have a negative short term for a positive long term. And that's one thing I worked on in Daystar there while I was there is like, hey, let's like play good proper siege, right? And practice this so that we can like, become better and eventually win. Right? And that's what I did on Daystar, and they actually were starting to look really good, but they just kind of really hardcore choked in the finals to qualify for Pro League. Or like requalify for Pro League, which was a real shame because it kind of put the work we put in, and made it look like it was kind of nothing. But yeah, they choked pretty hard.
Obviously, then Fabian was inspired by you and did the same thing and went to Korea.
Yeah, it was inspired by me, exactly.
Exactly. But eventually you had to come back. The return of the king to NA. You first of at least for what again, I'm going on completely off Wikipedia mainly because that's the best
Yeah,
reliable
yeah.
source. You played in a couple of T3 leagues. I'm pretty sure I may have casted you in either Freezy or Blitz. I cannot fully remember, but I think I did.
Yeah, maybe.
But then you also played in collegiate with Arizona State University. So how different do
Yes.
you think is collegiate compared to T2 or even T3 in its current state?
Totally, totally different. It's if you saw what these people are doing, you would be appalled. It's so behind and it's so terrible. And uh I think even if you look at a team like Akron, right? They're just you could see the difference between them and like the other teams, that are like playing in Challenge League, right? And they are the best by far. And it's not an issue of like individual skill. Obviously that exists, right?
Hmm.
Individual players are probably slightly less good. The biggest difference is just they play like it's 2020. And some older than that, right? Or they'll just run like default strats. And they're not current defaults either. They're like, we'll be playing Oregon and we're fully reinforcing off bunker, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, okay. Or like you fully reinforcing out box as well,
Hmm.
right? We're completely giving blue, right? And they're like, yeah, this is like how you play. You know, it's like, well, a good team's just gonna bring a hard breach, right? But they're like, nah,
Yeah.
nobody brings hard breach. So yeah, I did not enjoy playing collegiate because that step down, right? I was looking at it to be something that would be my replacement for competitive siege, right? My outlet for like that competitiveness, and it just could not fill that in the least. And so I was trying to make it that way for myself, but it just couldn't be that, and it ended up causing a lot of issues.
So obviously, you talked about them briefly, but Akron making it to Challenger Series. What are your thoughts on that overall? And do you think it's like a massive moving block for collegiate, for the future of collegiate at least?
Yeah, so I actually think it is. I think it's really, really important. I think a lot of collegiate doesn't understand how bad they are.
Hmm.
Um, it's and I think it is very, very, very good to have that reality check where the team that's shitting on you all the time, you see them get completely shit on, right? You're like, okay, there's levels to it, you know? Because I talk to these, collegiate players, and they're like, yeah, I'll be making Challenger League, you know? I could make it if we just put in a little bit of time. We just don't put in the time, you know? And it's like, no, no, you fucking couldn't. What? Like, yeah, you could if you put in, 8 hours a day, every day, for 3 months, 4 months, maybe. But you're not doing that. You're not scrimming proteins every day. Um, and so I, yeah, so I think it'll be very good to see that. I also think that if Akron can get better because of this, everyone's always going to be trying to rise to the level of the best team, right? And so if Akron gets a lot better and can start to be like looking on the same level as maybe a low tier Challenger League team, right? Then you could see the other teams in the league start to rise towards Akron's level, and then they all push each other to improve a lot faster. So I definitely think it will be important. I think it will be very helpful towards all of collegiate.
The only reason I can't disagree on your current opinions on collegiate is because I watched a Canada collegiate game because my friend was playing in it. I'm not going to say to the two teams because it would be disrespectful, but one of the teams I think was 6-4 up, and a player on the other team had crashed and couldn't load back into the game. And yet somehow the other team came back and won 8-7 while being
Yeah,
4v5,
that
6-4
kind of stuff
down.
happens a lot because collegiate is their strategies are so bad. Playing ranked is like very consistently the better option. And so the team that's probably playing as like 45 is like just running around a lot more, right? And so they're probably finding more success. Like that's how the level that collegiate's at right now. And it's like what it's actually a lot like T3 was 5 years ago, I'd say, where the best teams were actually the ones that just had decent gun skill and just ran around. Um because they, were able to they were able to just use the teams that were trying to actually do strategies because the strategies weren't good enough to actually stick together and the players weren't good enough to make those strategies actually function. Um, so yeah,
And
I
now
actually think it's a lot like that.
I think T3 does have a TD problem at the moment just because it is mainly now filled with just T2 teams. And I think it's really hard to make your name in T3 nowadays just because you're going to be battered by a T2 team all the time nowadays. Which I could have a
Yeah, well, I
different
actually
opinion
have.
for against.
So here's my opinion on this. I think
Hmm.
there's obviously a lot of tier three leagues that are still good for tier three players, but what's happened a lot more recently, and I think this is going to start to change a little bit, is with Challenger League basically being kind of nothing but money, right?
Hmm.
For a lot of these teams, their best bet is to play in a lot of tier three leagues as well, so they can actually make some money,
Yeah,
right? If you're sitting here and I'm sitting here and going, "Hey, Blitz or whatever has a $10,000 prize pool," that's the same as me winning all of, Element.
yeah.
I obviously I'm gonna compete in that, and I'm gonna actually put a lot of time and effort into it, or at least a little bit. Um, and then all of a sudden, all these tier three players get pushed down. Now, I think as long as you have a big prize pool like that, you're going to have some tier two competition, right? But with the importance of Challenger League being increased, I think you're going to start to see fewer Challenger League teams in these competitions because more of
Hmm.
them are going to just be focused on Challenger League. Um, right? If I'm sitting here and going, yeah, I could make, $1,000, or I could be in Pro League,
You're picking
all of a
Pro
sudden
League.
$1,000 is, yeah, exactly. It's pretty fucking easy, right? And so just not having to show more strats, not having to do all that, it becomes worthwhile to not compete in these tier three leagues. And I do think tier two teams should compete in tier three leagues
Hmm.
sometimes, especially the ones that are slightly less good, right? It gives them, more opportunities to improve and more opportunities for these tier three players to learn from the tier two players, so on. It needs to be a system,
I
but I
I
think,
just I just felt bad for the little guy when they were being stomped by Packet every single tournament.
yeah, no, I 100% agree. That does kind of suck. On the other hand, I will say my first ever league was Red Q Rainbow Six. Okay, 9 years ago now, Henry Danish, who I think currently is the videographer on M80,
Hmm.
um, he ran a league called Red Cube Rainbow Six. He went by Red Cube at the time. And in that league, you had teams like Sharks and Xeno and, whoever. And the players on these teams were, NJR, Iconic. I'm gonna say, some names you might not know now. You've got like Gasher, you got Box, you got who else was on the like Oblivion roster? Goodness. Lags, NGR, Iconic, uh I don't know, but they're basically a bunch of like the current pros, right? And they were really, really good like amateur players, right? I would play against them, I would get shit on.
Hmm.
Completely shit on. Right? I played on a team called I3LU. I just hit platinum, right? This was a big deal for me. Having hit platinum, by the way, was a big deal. Um, right? By the way, this is my big advocate in general. I'm gonna go over it later, but more people need to play calm.
Uh,
But yeah,
See, I went See, because obviously, as you've noticed, I kind of only talk about and look into NA, which is a big problem, because I recently thought I want to play comp finally, again at least, because I scrimmed like EU ages ago, and I was like,
yeah,
I'll go LFT in EU. I didn't get a single offer. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so here is my thing, okay? My big, big, big thing
Hmm.
right now, and I think a whole bunch of people need to start doing this. People need to start viewing competitive Siege not as I'm gonna become pro.
Hmm.
And you can have that hope and that dream, right? And you could even believe you will one day. People need to start viewing it as I'm gonna do this because it's the most fun way to play Siege, right? I think the biggest like I love this guy for everything he does is Carnage B, right? At this point, I don't think Karn has expectations of ever going to Pro League, but he plays because he fucking loves competitive Siege. He has a lot of fun with it, and he obviously makes a little bit of money for it as well. But he loves playing it, right? And that's awesome. And I wish more players who sit there and played ranked all the time, and we're sitting there and are gold or even silver, right? I started playing and like on scrimming competitive teams, looking for competitive teams when I just hit gold in Siege, right? I was not a good player.
Hmm.
I was not, right? I'm not like some gold player who's a hidden champ, No, I was a full-on gold player. I didn't know what certain things did, right? I didn't know the angles. I didn't know everything, right? Um, and first of all, playing competitive got a lot better, a lot faster, right? Started learning how to actually play the game, started learning how to do interesting things, right? But, secondly, and I think most importantly, is that uh these if you come and you will have fun because
Hmm.
this is the way Siege is meant to be played. And playing that kind of Siege, even if you're just doing it with your buddies, even if you're, not ever gonna win, you can get completely shit on, right? If you sit there and you just try your best, you will have a good time because you're playing Siege the way it's meant to be done. And you might start to improve and you might start to win. And you know what? One day you might be in Pro League. And I think that's fucking awesome. That's the way it should be. And I think right now the current path to pro, right, where everyone's sitting there and you go in these weird random discords that have these weird random LFT channels, which is the way it's always been, by the way. I'm not,
Hmm.
saying it's somehow now bad. It's always been kind of shitty. Um, it's not that functional, and I think
Hmm.
because for instance, I think joined like 3 teams ever. Almost every team I've ever been on, I've made. Or, I've done it. I've like asked like one other person, we've made it together, right? And I think that's one of the things you kind of got to be aware of is ever you're doing these things is if you're the guy who goes, I'm gonna go just make the team, and you just go message 5 people, everyone's looking for a team, nobody's making a team. Always remember that because nobody wants to take on that responsibility. But yeah, just people need to start just going out there and being like, yeah, I'm gonna go play competitive Siege. I'm gonna do it. Right? You don't have to compete in leagues. You don't have to do anything special. Just go, scrim once a week. Right? And you know what? The next time you see a qualifier, go play in that. Right? And I think I would love to see more players who aren't the best start trying to compete competitive. Because I think right now it's seen as something that you should only play competitive if you're good. No, you should play competitive even if you're shitty. You don't need to be good at the game to play competitive, right?
No, I completely agree, because I would admit that my most fun time playing Siege was actually Freezy Season 1, because I was offered a spot to play, and I thought, I know, I'll get 4 of my friends to just play it for why
Yeah.
not, even though I'm going to be on like 140 ping. We lost the first map, and one of our players named Hoa showered at us saying, are we trying or are we trolling? So we said, so we just said, okay, we're trolling. We trialled the entirety of I think Oregon's actually still in pool, so we trialled the entirety of Oregon. We won 7-1. And one of the rounds, one of our
Nice.
players from spawn proned all the way down laundry stairs. It ended up being a 1v1 somehow, and he won the 1v1.
It's so good. So
It's
good.
stupid.
But yeah, it doesn't always have to be, you know, I'm gonna be the next pro player. Sometimes it could just be I'm just playing the game and having fun, right? And I think ranked is
It's not fun.
it's just uninteresting, right? I'm not here to say that it's not fun. If that's all you got, like sure, it's fine. But why do I think about it a lot like something like Melee, right? You can go play against the fucking random computers, you know, and play against AIs and like Melee, right? Super Smash Bros. Melee, by the way, if I need to clarify. Right? But even if you're not good, people play competitive Melee because it's fun and there's community and, you know, there's great parts about it. You get to compete, you know, you get to go to events, you get to do all these different things. And that's what I want people to think competitive Sieges, right? Not some exclusive club for, you know, the best players to play the game. That's not what esports should be, right? When you think, you know, I'm going to go join a basketball league, you don't think, oh, I have to be the next fucking Shaq and Kobe, right? You go, I'm going to go play for fun, you know, once a week on, you know, enjoy myself with my buddies. And I think that's really what esports should be thriving to be.
Yeah, I'd agree. Obviously, you spoke about him in briefing, but Carnage B, I had actually an altercation. Well, not an altercation, but we had a little Twitter beef for like 5 seconds. Well, after Wildcard, I think it was Wildcard Restart 2, or yeah, it was Wildcard Restart, not, because obviously the first one was Breaking Point. They posted the groups, they posted the standings, or the bracket, whatever it's called, and I commented on it, Card may finally win a game. Because this is after he had like a poor losing streak. As a little joke,
Yeah.
Khan then replied to me saying, "Who the fuck are you?" Which I always find funny to this. No, I find it funny because I just responded, "A nobody. Don't worry, man." I find it funny.
Oh no.
No, Khan's lovely. I love Khan, honestly. Like he's such a lovely person.
Yeah, I do think that is one thing that is tough as a player because you get a lot of people who will genuinely criticize you. It's hard to tell what's genuine versus what isn't. And so Karn's probably sitting there just being like, wow, this random person's being an asshole towards me. You know, what did I do to this guy? Right? And, you know, obviously the intent's very different. I do think that is one thing that I found very interesting being, this is another kind of British-American thing. That British idea of you just say something and it's obviously just like...
A joke.
Here, it's a joke. But here, if you want to do that, you have to just say something that's so boldly a lie, right? You can't have just like a little bit of just, you know, rudeness in it and it be taken.
Because I feel like British people, we heckle each other quite a lot. We make fun of each other quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I'm not going to say they're soft, but they're just not used to just being like insulted all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's a bit of a culture shock, and I think it does make it hard to be like on these social media platforms sometimes, and you say things and people just don't take it that way at all. And it's like, oh fuck, okay, well, you know, what am I gonna do about that?
I saw that actually firsthand at Boston because obviously Packer was still there after the event. He looked down the entire event, obviously all throughout Twitter, all throughout social media, always talked down on them as the worst player. I spoke to him a bit. He generally seemed quite upset. I tried to speak him up, but I did say one thing that I felt bad for saying. I did say, hopefully you guys do really well at Reload.
Yeah, well, he kind of knew he was going to get dropped after that event.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't, so I felt bad saying it to his face. He's still going, luckily.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's still going. Or, wait.
Yeah, C9's partnered. Yeah. C9's the fifth unannounced partner team.
Oh, no, they're not announced?
They're announced now, but when at SI they had four partner teams.
I was going to say, did I leak something?
No.
Just making sure.
But no, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I saw it firsthand, and it definitely must be hard, because obviously, I'd say, like, sports players get it enough, but esports player, they'll see it more often, because obviously, you don't have to filter through all the other stuff that football players normally have to do. You see more of the bad stuff. As soon as you go like down, it's mainly only negative.
Yeah, and I think so much of your interaction is online. So immediately you go online, and the people it's a lot easier for somebody who's online to be a piece of shit to you than it is for somebody who's in person.
Yeah.
Right? So all of after I've had after games where somebody's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you, and it's like that kind of sucks,
And in
you
person,
know.
they don't do anything.
Yeah, obviously not, but it's like that kind of shit, just like suddenly getting that after you lose a game, or it's like, dude, I feel shitty enough already. You don't gotta get on my ass about it, I'm not sitting here feeling good.
No. Obviously, getting on to the next question, obviously, I'm going to finally get on to my favourite team that you've been on. I don't know why, but my love for this team stemmed, obviously, but before that team actually started, you were on a team called First Day Out for the Qualifier 1 with Mike W, Zim, Fens,
Yeah.
Alex. You spoke about why Zim left or got dropped. And then you eventually lost to FT in upper, lost to Garage Talks in lower, Fens
Yeah.
left, Zim left or kicked or whatever. Brios and Epic came in as replacements. Why did these new players complement the rest of the team instantly and help this newly named LIS reach E4?
So, I think at that first qualifier with that roster, um, I honestly I don't I think the biggest difference was we just had so much fun together. This new roster. Um, yeah, everyone just felt super comfortable just around each other, and there was no weird, being awkward around each other, and treating each other, at arm's length. And I think honestly the biggest reason for that is Alex. I think Alex is one of the most fun people I've ever teamed with. He's an absolute joy. Um, and uh, he's super easygoing, super nice, and he wants to win so badly. Right? Every single day after practice, he'd be like, "Hey, let's go. Can we go over this VOD together? Can you help me with this stuff?" Right? Every single practice. And I'm like, when I see that at a player, I'm like, this guy's gonna be great. Right? So yeah.
Obviously, I don't know why I love that team so much. I think it was when I looked at the teams after Qualifier 1, I looked at the Qualifier 2 teams, and I saw the team, I was like, yeah, this seems good. I said it, I speak to my friend in a VC, and I was like, have you seen this team? They're like, no. And I was like, look at it. It's stacked. And then as I modding Jesse J. Chick's stream, and I said, Jesse, LIS is winning it all. They're going to go 3-0 in bracket. They're like, no, they're not. They're losing to SSG Academy. I was like, no, they're going to beat them. And then
Yeah.
you won me predict. I think I messaged Mike after it because I think one of the predictions on Jesse's chat was top frag on border for SSG in the SSG Academy game, and I bet all my channel points on Mike. And I messaged him again. I was like, "Thank you for the channel points." But
Yeah, I think that was a really really fun team, and I think we were really really good together. Now I'm sure you're gonna talk about playoffs a little bit.
yeah,
I'm happy to get a little bit of word on.
unfortunately, I will have to. But the dominant run obviously started, like I said, you went 3-0 in Swiss, first in SI Open Qual, but then the form dipped. Obviously, you lost in Crucible, and then obviously you went 0-2 inside of blanking E4 playoffs.
Yeah.
Obviously,
so here's what I would say about
I was
that.
gonna say the first game was unfortunate because obviously in the second map you did have the admin issue, and then
That
obviously Epic. I'm pretty
Bryce
sure.
disconnected.
Oh no, Bryce disconnected. Yeah.
Yes. That was very, very, very problematic. Very frustrating. But I'll also say throughout this whole process of us basically playing in those playoffs, it was not our focus, not even a little bit. Neither Crucible nor Element was our focus because at the end of the day, as I said before, if we win Element, nothing changes. Okay.
You get money.
We get some money, right? On the other hand, if we can win invite quals, which the teams competing against us weren't that great, especially if you look at OXG prior to, during like our actual regular stage, they looked horrible, right? So it's like, hey, if we could just beat out Wildcard now, we can, actually make SI. This is an easy qualifier, or not hard qualifier at least. So all of our focus was on making that. Like we completely changed our playstyle to be able to beat those specific teams, right? Like we had done a lot of work to be able to beat those teams, and in doing so, we kind of just got beaten out during Challenger League, and I kind of we didn't really mind. It just wasn't for us. It wasn't that big of a deal. And I know outside looking in, you're like, why is this not your big focus? This is like your main league you're competing in, right? But that's just the reality of the situation for us. And I do, think it's obviously not perfect, and we obviously wanted to win, but our efforts weren't towards winning that. They were towards winning SI quals. And when you're competing against pro teams versus Challenger League teams, there's certain, especially in the short term, right? If you're practicing for that stuff in the short term, a lot of things are going to change that aren't necessarily going to be beneficial towards beating, Challenger League teams.
It's kind of the meme G2 thing that everyone like said it as a meme for a while, but was actually true in like I think it was 2019. Because obviously they're playing badly for all of 2018.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't all. It was like end of 2018. People were like, oh, they must be saving strats as like a joke, and they literally were.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you guys were basically saving your strats, making sure you were ready. So then obviously the ready
Yeah.
for SI quals, which you generally performed well in. Obviously, unfortunately, losing
We
to both
performed really well.
OXG and Cruelty, but honestly, you probably should have beaten that OXG team, but something just fell
Yeah.
apart in those closing rounds. What do you think it was that
It
really
was
fell apart?
the problem was just our strat book, right? I think we were the better team on that day, and we could have and probably should have won. But by the time we were in that like 7-7 match point round, I'm sitting there looking at our strat book. We've run every strat like 3 times, right? And I'm like, yeah, we're just gonna run this one again, and let's hope we can make it work. And at the end of the day, it just is getting picked apart piece by piece. It's just not a great strategy, right? It's nothing special, and most strategies aren't meant to be run twice, let alone 3-4 times, right? And so yeah, we just kind of got beaten out there. And then once we've been beaten out by them, I think it's a bit of a shitty schedule because I'm pretty sure we had to play Cruelty same day.
Yeah, you did.
A best of 3
It was
right
like
after.
literally right
Yeah,
after, yeah.
and the guy we had put literally everything on the line, like in terms of our energy and like just focus onto that game, and so they, we were just everyone was just exhausted,
Yeah.
and nobody we didn't feel bad losing to Cruelty or Oxygen, because Oxygen, we put our hearts out there, we'd done everything we possibly could, and we just didn't quite get it. Oxygen played really well, and obviously they did well at the invite as well, right? They obviously had like put in a lot of work and gotten a lot better.
They were one game off making main stage.
Yeah, exactly. They were a very, very solid team there. And we very nearly beat them, but just not quite. And then we went on to Cruelty, and none of the guys afterwards were like, wow, we shouldn't have lost Cruelty. Everyone was like, yeah, it just kind of sucks. We were just, you could hear it after the game, when you play a real proper game where everyone truly puts everything on, like people are genuinely like, they're like out of breath, right? Everyone is, like dead silent. You're just like lean back and, oh my God. Right?
It is a questionate
thing.
It is a questionate thing why every single stage of the qualifiers were a double ELM system. Because personally, I didn't think it made much sense. I don't know what you would think of as a competitor.
It was terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really bad. I think it was a very, very shitty format. But I don't think that's why we lost.
No.
By the way, I'm not. I think it was a shitty format, and I think it might have affected Wildcard. Although I actually don't think that's why Wildcard lost either. I think they just choked. I think they would have choked whether the match was earlier or later. But yeah, I do think it was a shitty system. I will say.
I don't want to bully you for this, but there is one round I always remember on Border, and it's when you've got the bomb planted in vents and you're above the diffuser with fuse. What was the communication like in that round for it to slowly just fall apart?
I don't remember what happened.
All I remember, I don't fully remember, but the thing
was
in my, I'm pretty sure you were fuse shield. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you were fuse shield.
That sounds possible.
And you were above.
Yeah,
you were above on. You were above in armory.
I think I got flanked. No.
You got flanked, and I think the flanker took 5 years to see you, and you were still looking down below, and he just didn't see you. And then he eventually figured out you were there.
I just didn't know the guy was flanking.
That's
right?
fair.
So, it is what it is.
It happens.
Right.
Obviously, outside looking in, like we don't know that, and it's just an interesting thing to ask. Because obviously, casters will make it seem like a massive throw out of the craziness, like you've thrown like a massive round.
I think it's very interesting because I think in general the throws that look really big are typically not the big throws in actuality. Obviously, sometimes they are, right? If it's just like egregious play out of somebody, it's like okay, yeah. But the big throws you'll find are generally like little things. It'll be like a miscom or something, right? Those are the big throws. That happen, somewhat more often, and you'll go after the end and be like, yeah, this is why we lost, right? This right here. It's very rare you're sitting there after the game and you're going like, yeah, we lost because you suck, individually, and you needed to do this, right? It's that almost never happens. Obviously, sometimes we're like, hey, we probably could have won that round. You could have done this better. You could have hit that shot, right? But like, eh.
Okay, I think a big one that comes to mind recently, especially, is Usus at SI, when obviously the time is going down. Handy, instead
Mm-hmm.
of trying to plant the bomb, he just sticks to holding the angle, waiting for him to run out.
Yeah.
Honestly, on a stage, at
So
least what I heard of, you don't hear anything.
I'll be honest. You wouldn't. He probably wouldn't have heard that plant going down regardless,
Hmm.
right? I think people flamed Handy for that, and I think it was crazy to flame him for that. I think he played it entirely normally because imagine the guy is planting and then he lets the plant go down in that 1v1. People would be flaming him
Yeah.
just as much, or maybe not just as much. They'd be flaming him a lot as well, right? In a round that he probably should have won. And you know what? The Hughes did something that nobody else would have done, and like nobody had really done before, and it was a really really interesting play, and that's the reason they won. Right? It's very different, and he took a massive gamble. And if Hughes had lost, everyone would have said Hughes is a fucking idiot. Why wasn't he
Yeah.
playing the bomb? Right? It's you know what I mean. It's like you can't say everyone's an idiot. At a certain point, maybe somebody just outplayed their opponent. And I think that's one thing I really 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 think is important, and I think I value a lot in casters is when rather than it being this guy's bad or this team's bad, it's hey, this team did this. Try to find what the good out of it rather than bad, even if it is bad.
There's only one time
Uh,
I have said a team has thrown, and I got shouted at by the team for saying they threw, was when they were in a 1v3 with a Monty up, and instead of trying to just shield bash the guy to the floor and get a refrag, he ADS'd right in front of his face and got shot in the face. And then lost the
yeah,
1v3.
like
That's the only time I've
sure.
said someone's thrown.
Yeah, I think there's moments like that where you'd be like, yeah, it happens. But like
Yeah.
when I think it's a lot of situations where you'll see where casters like, it'll be like a 4v5 man up on like a situation where it's like, hey, it's probably winning towards one side, and they'll be like, oh, this team lost because they played it worse. It's like maybe
Yeah.
the other teams played really well. It happens. Especially when you're playing against good players.
Yeah. Obviously, moving on from LIS, it's sort of somewhat disbanded for reasons unknown to the public, but then you then had a small stint on JJ & Co., which then changed into RTV again, bringing it again back from the dead inside of Crucible.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to join JJ, and then why did you eventually leave so quickly right after group stages?
Well, so I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but I really wanted JJ to like find success. I want him to like get to Pro League at some point because me and Poison have kind of sort of done it, and I think I would just like to see all three of us have done it because we kind of grew up the whole way together. But I started working with him, and it was a little bit of a negative experience. I think obviously it just didn't work. That the biggest thing is it just didn't work, right? Two IGLs were like losing out some firepower because of it, and our styles conflicted with each other quite heavily, and our ideas of how we want to develop a team were quite different, right? And the other big problem was there was a coach on the team, and that coach just basically every single time would just take JJ's side, right? And it meant that when we were having these discussions, it was basically just me against, the team, right? And that made it a little bit problematic. And I was pretty easygoing in terms of it, but at a certain point, I wasn't getting any headway, and I went, I need to go. So I left the team. Later on, I found out they were like talking a lot of shit and all this while I was on the team, and I'm like, that's just kind of weird activity. I don't know what that's about, but like, yeah, and it was really just like it just wasn't working. Is the long and the short of it, and sometimes that happens. Not every team is made to work, right? And we didn't really do a trial process or anything, so it's not like we had seen if it was going to work and it was working during trial scrims and just didn't work on game day or something. It just wasn't working, period. But yeah, I give it a go. I wanted to make it work. The big thing for me is I didn't want to stay on LAS. The big reason why was I thought that team had a lot of rookie players, and not just like a little bit rookie. Like Alex has been playing competitive Siege for 6 months, Epic for a year, right? That's a fucking tiny amount of time in the grand scheme of things. It's nothing. And so when they came to me, they had no idea how to play competitive. Epic's now in fucking.
I was about to say Epic's now in Pro League, which when I read the news, like I love Epic. He's a lovely guy. He's a really good player. Yeah. But when I saw he was in Pro League, I generally was like, okay, that's very surprising. Which isn't, and again, not a slight on him. It's just happened so quickly.
So I'm happy for him. But I also think that it is a little bit of, he made friends with the right people.
Hmm.
That definitely helped. But I'm worried that maybe he'll, improve a lot and he's going to have gotten a lot better. And I think he is definitely getting better,
Hmm.
obviously, with this new team. But in my opinion, he wasn't ready, right? He wasn't ready for to be like a top Challenger League team. Maybe he could have been top Challenger League, but he's not ready for Pro League. Maybe bottom Pro League he's ready for. But, if you go to Pro League and are a bottom Pro League
You're relegated
player
now.
/ team, you're relegated or you just don't ever get another offer again, right? It's just one of those systems where if you don't, first impressions matter a fucking lot, because if you don't
Yeah.
perform your first time in Pro League, everyone goes, oh, he's just not good enough to be playing Pro League.
I think a
I
really
think it's
good
such a odd idea, but yeah, go on.
I think a really good example of that actually is Twists. Like, if I recall, remember, he was on LG and then he was put on hard sport, which I don't think the role suited him at all. He had an awful stage and now just hasn't been given another chance in Pro League since, and it's now just been
It's the same.
starring in T2, to be honest, but just hasn't still been given that step up again.
It's the same as Packer, right? Packer went to Parabellum. They played one qualifier together and they didn't win. And all of a sudden Packer was like the worst in the world, and he couldn't get any offers. He couldn't get any tryouts. Couldn't get anything. Right? He had to go win it all again like twice. Yeah, I think it is a bit of a problem in the ways people view it. But I'm hoping that's not what ends up happening to Epic. But I can't obviously. I obviously can't know.
Obviously, moving on, you're now playing in Challenger Series. You played in the quals, teaming back up. It seems like you two are forever Mike W. But just before we get onto that, there was an event between Crucible and Challenger Series called SI. Obviously, you weren't playing, but you were staying in the same Airbnb as Mike W. What was that like? How chaotic was it with you two staying in the same Airbnb?
That was fun. So it was me, Mike, and Moses, and it was actually really chilled out. It was us three. It was very chill, right? We kind of just we have a couple drinks here and there, but we chill out. We really just went to bed there. But we go out, and the big thing at SI was Poison's parties, right? And I'm not sure how publicly these are known about. But yeah, Poison was hosting parties every night, and it was pretty good. It was pretty solid. He hosted pretty well. There was, I think, about $1,000 of alcohol was drank every night in that home.
Fair enough.
And yeah, and you had every big name you can imagine was coming there. You had like all the tier 2 players. You had a few random people. But it was fun. It was really, really fun. Yeah.
No. Obviously,
no,
I did walk up to you three while drunk, obviously in a bar, and just. I don't know if you were leaving, but I don't think I stopped you guys from leaving. Or at least I hope I didn't stop you guys, because I think you were speaking to Packer at the time.
Wait, hold on. In a bar?
It wasn't a bar. It was like a. I don't know what they're called in America.
Okay,
I'd just call it a bar. I would just call it a bar.
Yes. It was like a. Was there bowling in it?
I think so. Because the castle lot was there as well. Because I was standing with my
Who was there?
The casting lot, like Jesse was there and Tara was there.
Oh,
and
yes.
You were there with Packer.
No, it was a bar, but like, it was more of a restaurant.
Yeah.
That had a bar in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would call that like maybe like a sports bar. It's probably what we'd call that. But yeah, we couldn't go to like actual bars because Mike's not 21 and Packer's not 21. And so, yeah, I only went to one bar during the trip in Boston, which was a bit of a shame, but it was a fun bar. It's a fun bar.
I'm going to be honest, I went to a bar every single night, and I was there from Tuesday. So
nice. Well,
my bank balance.
I'm not saying I wasn't drinking. I just wasn't at bars.
Oh yeah.
I was.
My bank balance still has not recovered. I think.
Oh no.
I think one night I drank 10 ciders, 4 vodka Red Bulls, and like 4 just seltzers. I drank way too much, and I don't normally drink that much.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I was doing like 15 to 20 drinks a night.
That actually reminds me, because on the event when we went to the final bar on the final day, it was actually, I'm pretty sure you've played against him before, but X's birthday, and I got everyone in the bar to buy him a drink. So he had like 5 beers on his table, just stacked up, and when he left, he was pissed.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, no.
Oh no, yeah, Boston was fun. I loved Boston. A lot of people didn't like Boston, which was kind of
I
crazy to me.
loved
I thought
it.
it was a great city.
I think it was my favorite
Yeah,
event.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, I've only been to like Montreal events, and I went to one other. I went to Charlotte, but um, yeah, I've thought it was the best event I've been to by far.
Hmm.
Not even close. Montreal fucking sucks.
I went to Montreal. I didn't hate Montreal. I didn't mind it. I would say it's my no, it's not my least favorite because I went to Copenhagen and that was very, very dead. I'll be honest. That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
It was like the crowd was quiet because as soon as G2 lost, they just didn't care because the only Danish player's gone. Atlanta was really fun. It was very loud, so I like that.
Yeah,
The crowd was good, and then Manchester was also amazing. So I've been to the last four
nice, nice,
majors
nice.
and last SI. But enough about that. We're going to move on to you actually talking about Challenger League. Obviously, Mike W, Kiru, Asian, and Resited. How did this team come to be, and how far do you see yourself going with this team?
So this team is how did this team come to be? Well, I was originally on the kind of like sorry, Washington Wizards roster. I kind of
Mhm.
joined that, but it was going okay, but like nothing special. And some of our players ended up having to leave because they got a job, real life stuff. I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but no, but one of our players or two of our players had to leave, and things were kind of like falling apart a little bit. And then SI happened, and everyone's obviously chatting up at SI,
Mhm.
right? And by everyone I mean me. So I start talking to I'll go through it. I can talk. Fuck it.
Yeah.
It's all out in the open now. So I start talking, and I'm like, you know what would be good? I've never. So by the way, I have in my entire career, I think I've lost to LG once, and it was like in a recent,
It
like the
was
recent like element
it was
qualifiers.
Element 4
Yeah,
qualifier 1. It was
yeah.
technically it's not
That's
LG, it's technically friendship team.
I
You
know
know.
exactly, but like that's what I'm saying. The only time I've lost to that group of
Mhm.
players ever
Yeah.
is that I beat them with fucking Fet on my team. Okay, in
I
pro
remember
league.
the Fet
Like
dance, not the
yes,
Fet dance.
yes. Like these guys cannot beat me. I'm their
Yeah.
fucking daddy. Okay. And so I'm like, you know what would be great? I could probably get some of these players right now. I need players right now, right? In tier 2 who are good and are gonna win with, right, and have some experience. I'm gonna go up to some of these guys and I'm gonna try and get some of these guys. So I start chatting them up, right? So I'm chatting about, and eventually I secure Asian, Eddie, and Kicks. Okay? Sorry, no, not Kicks. Asian, Eddie, and Silent. And I've spoken with Kicks, but we ended up talking on Silent instead of Kicks. I was like, I only want one of the two. I want Silent. So we start scrimming, and things are going pretty okay, but Silent gets an offer to go to Cloud9, and he obviously takes that. And it's like, okay, that's fine. We replace Silent. Things are still going okay. Eddie decides he thinks he's obviously been given the LG spot at this point. LG wants him, and LG's letting him pick a roster, right? And he goes, I want to take a different group of players, and so he goes to the players now on LG, and is like, yeah, I want to go team with you guys, right? So he goes joins them. So it's then me, Asian, and Mike W. Or no, not Mike W. Me, Asian, and Zach resided. Okay, so at this point we'd gotten resided on in there. Um, and so I'm like, hey, I want to get Mike W. And he's a really good support player. I really like him. His vocality works. We previously tried him on the team, and some people hadn't liked him. They were like, yeah, it's not working, right? I was like, no, I want to get Mike W. So get Mike W. And then Zach's like, yeah, I like Kiru. Let's get Kiru. So we try out Kiru. Kiru comes in his first scrim, and I think he drops 23 against, I think it was against M80 in his first scrim. And we're like, okay, we might need to get this guy. I think we try him out like one more time, but yeah, we get Kiru on the board as well. So that's how this roster kind of came to be. But yeah, it was these off seasons. They're always a good time, And I find what happens is I always end up with the short end of the stick, and most of the time I still end up doing pretty well.
Yeah, at the moment, the T2 Warlord 2-0 currently just off beating. And what some people are calling a little bit of an upset, and I would say, especially the first map, rolling over current T2 champions, Nightmare. Did you expect a closer game going into it, or did you expect to beat them this dominantly and this easily?
So I would say I did expect a closer game. I think map 2 they kind of actually put a little bit of fight in, but I'll be honest, we were not playing that good on bank, right? Uh, our we just weren't playing that good on bank. We lost it against Blackbird Gaming, right? So it's clearly not like a map we're doing great on right now. And uh, we still managed to beat them there, and then on Cafe they just looked like shit. So going to map ends, we have a big map pool. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, we can, go to whatever maps they don't like. And so we start doing map bans, and their permaban is Cafe. And they leave it up, and I'm like, okay, well, like, we have other maps we want to go to, but, like, let's just go to Cafe and see what happens. We go to Cafe, and they just have no idea what the fuck they're doing. I honestly, I think the biggest thing with that game is I don't know why the fuck they were on Cafe with us. I think if they win that first game or, have a chance to win the first map, we maybe don't get to win the second map then, and that map game becomes close. But, like, I think the biggest thing in that game is they lost it in map bans. Obviously, I think we still could beat that team. I think we're still better than that team, right? But, the fact we're going to that map just makes it easy.
Well,
but yeah, I did expect it to be closer.
I can say at the moment you are beating the best to be the best, and you've got another top T2 team next. It's JJ again. It seems like you two are destined to do this dance together, always going up against each other or always with each other. And I think this is a very simple question. How much do you want to beat JJ?
I don't care.
You don't care? You don't care, it's JJ?
So, okay. Listen. Here's what I'll say. I think having an ego is very, very, very important. And I, obviously had a bit of an ego death after Beastcoast, and so I did a lot of looking inwards, and I have really found a calm center, but that doesn't mean I don't want to beat JJ. But I will say it's not out of hatred. Okay, I want to beat him because God, I just want to beat him and put him in his place a little bit. Just
yeah.
He right now he's feeling like he isn't, mediocrity, and I need him to know that's what he is. And maybe one day that'll change, but he needs me.
Yeah.
No, but I also think it'll be good for Zach as well. I think Zach's always been a little bit under.
I was going to
JJ,
say,
so
obviously,
nice
Resighted obviously also having a little bit of a grudge match just being... I don't know if he was dropped or if he left the JJ and Co.
Kira too.
Kira too? Oh, yeah, Kira.
Dropped off.
So many players have been on that team. It's really hard to remember.
So, yeah. So, Kira and Zach, now, they really want to beat JJ. I'm here, I'm like, yeah, I want to beat JJ because I want to win, but, like, I'm not that opposed to JJ. Yeah, we finished our match against Nightmare. We get the announcement against JJ, and I'm like, yeah, we have an off day. One of my big rules is always have an off day after a match, win or lose. And I'm like, yeah, take an off day, take a break. Q then the next day sends me like 6 pages of VOD review on JJ. He's like, we are beating the fuck out of these guys. I don't give a fuck. I'll be honest, I've been pretty complacent this week, okay? I've been chilling out a little bit, right? Maybe I shouldn't be, not maybe. I shouldn't be, I should be dialed in, I should be focused, I should be grinding some ranked, right? Our scrims have been like kind of not great because a lot of the pro teams are like not wanting to scrim us right now and stuff, and we just had some like a bunch of cancellations this week. It's been rough, right? Been a little complacent. But that doesn't mean the other guys have been. This week they might need to put me on their back. Last week I did a little bit of the heavy lifting. We won almost every single attack, and as an IGL, that's kind of my job, right? So I'll definitely say I did good work there last week. This week, maybe they'll carry me a little bit.
And also, do you think, obviously you don't have to disclose this if you think it will give away some of the game plan, but do you think recently being on, obviously, JJ and Co. for a lot of your members, including yourself, will help you have a little bit of tactical edge over JJ himself?
Oh, I think 100%. I also think JJ is like a little picture book, okay? He's very easy to read, So, yeah, I'm not too stressed about it. I think we'll kind of go in every round, and he can do whatever he wants. It's not going to change anything, because I can tell you what he's going to do right now.
I guess we'll see in the game. Obviously, that is Saturday, right? Saturday,
Yes,
7.
it is.
I was going to say 7 BST, which would be.
Yeah.
I don't know what that'd be
It's 2
EST.
Eastern.
2 Eastern, okay.
2 Eastern.
And obviously, what are your overall thoughts on the CL format this season?
I think the CL format is actually really good. So after this Swiss stage, we just go straight to double elimination playoffs, right? Yeah, I think this is
I
great.
think
I
that's
think
right. I
only
think that's
best
right,
of
yeah.
threes. Yeah, this is a great format. I think it's a really good format.
Honestly, when the first game happened, I did a stream on talking about CL, and I got something completely wrong. I was like, okay, so this is going to be a BO1, and I got surprised. Like, wait, this is BO3, which I think is a very cool idea,
Yeah.
but it just surprised me.
So I don't I like it a lot. Here's the things I would say. I think there were some issues with the streaming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that hasn't been great. I'll also say I think that playing only a very select few teams out of the bunch means that you could just get unlucky, right?
Yeah.
Like for instance, a team this week is going to play Nightmare. A 1-1 team is going to play Nightmare, right? That doesn't feel quite right, you know? That team's going to be feeling pretty shitty right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's kind of what I mean. I think the only issue with this format is that there are not that many games, and so if you just get unlucky, you can just get screwed.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like Core have not had
right?
the greatest run of games either. I'm pretty sure they faced JJ last, now they're instantly having to face Spaceships as well, which are a decently known T2 team.
Did Core lose?
Core lost to JJ and Co.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously JJ Co against you now.
Yeah.
So now Core have to face obviously Spaceships and 1-1. That's I wouldn't say that. I'd say they're both decently big teams in T2. One of them is now going to go 2-1.
I think Spaceships
1 and 2.
is definitely the would not be the favorites. I think QR will be the easy favorites there, but obviously they're both competent teams. So yeah, I also think, in my opinion, from what I've seen of this QR roster, I think they're actually a pretty weak team, which is a bit of a shame because actually I love the guys on QR. I think all of them are super nice people and they're actually good at the game. Yeah, they're actually, if there was any other Challenger League team that had to win, I would want it to be them. Just because I like them.
I'll be honest, other than your team, I'd probably pick Spaceships just because I was bought a jersey by someone who's affiliated with Spaceships.
Awesome.
So I'd have to go with them. And Jake Allen is my leader. So.
Okay, nice. Yeah, no, I like the Spaceships guys as well. They're good people. I haven't had any issues with them. What is their full roster right now?
Teddy Volsper.
Oh, okay.
Toaster, Scoob, and Eli. Not Eli. Siege.
Oh, not Eli. No.
Exige.
Okay, you told me Teddy is all I know. I love Teddy.
Teddy's lovely.
Love Teddy.
I have an ongoing joke on just shit talking Teddy, but I do love him. He's a nice guy. I met him at Boston. No, he's a lovely guy.
100%. Yeah, I was hanging out with him in Boston. He has been basically every time I have come back to the game, I have teamed with him for a week and then gone on to really good stuff elsewhere. Yeah, it's been, I don't know, it's like a thing. It happened this time as well. Every time I come back to the game, I team with Teddy for a week.
Well, now
I don't know, it's weird.
He's looking to make his name on a new roster. But what are your thoughts on the future of R6 esports as a whole and your own future goals in the game?
So my goal is 100% Pro League. I think I will be making Pro League. And so yeah, I think that for me, that's my short-term goal, right? Long-term, I have a lot more. That's my short-term. And then I think as far as R6 esports, I'm actually really excited. I think this new, I don't know if you know much about this current the Ubisoft division and stuff, but I think this new Ubisoft split has a lot to prove. Because the Guillermo family, that is the main owners of the R6 split, they basically have to prove to Tencent that they can run the company well. And they also, now that Tencent has a larger chunk of Siege, Tencent's gonna have a little bit more input in it. And Tencent, they know how to make successful games, right? You can love them or hate them, they know how to make successful games. So yeah, I'm very excited about Siege for that reason. I also think that in terms of the esport, they're investing in it well. I think the ideas are good. I think bringing back grassroots with challengers is really good. I think Reload sounds a bit silly, but we'll see. The only thing for me right now is I think the lack of competitions at a high level. I think
Yeah.
the fact that as a pro player you're playing 2 seasons a year, right? It's like that's so you're doing like 8 months off season a year, and the problem was even with 3 seasons a year, right? A lot of organizations were trying to not pay players during off season, right? Now imagine how hard it's going to be to convince teams or organizations that hey, you should pay your players 12 months a year for them to be on screen for like 20 days a year,
Yeah, and
right?
especially if the team doesn't make an international event, it would make orgs
Oh
maybe
no,
feel a little
exactly.
bit less hesitant using more.
100%, 100%. But like normally, if they don't make international events, like yeah, it's still they're playing. It used to be they're playing 4 or 5 seasons a year, right? They're still gonna have like 50 days of the year, 60 days a year where they're actively playing a match, and you can watch them right then and there. That's great. But with this system, I feel like you're just never seeing them play, and that's that's the easy part about running an esport is like just putting in more play days, right? I know the idea is like, hey, maybe there's like issues with budget in terms of other things, but that's where the budget should be going,
I
right?
agree.
I don't care what you have to do, like whatever you have to do to make more matches happen, make more matches happen.
I think esports is the life of
Yeah,
Siege. I think it's what the game runs off.
I think here's what I would say. I think it actually isn't, but I think it could and should be
Well, I only
because I think.
I was gonna say our
Sorry, go on.
time. I was gonna say our time is coming short, so I do only have 2 questions left. But there is a question in
Okay,
chat.
okay.
But can you continue what you're saying quickly?
No, no, that was basically it. Go on.
Well, the quick question from chat is Mr. B a Schuber?
A Schuber,
It's like because
like space Schuber.
yeah. Don't ask
Oh,
me. Ask chat.
I'm a Schuber. I am a Schuber. I fuck this with the Schubes.
All right. So
Yeah, no, they're good. I like the org and they're nice people. And the org seems to always be supporting their teams in chat. I think that's, that stuff is meaningful because a lot of orgs don't put in that little bit of effort.
yeah, I'd agree. I've spoken to Lenny a lot of times, who is the owner of Sheep. He's a lovely guy. He
Yeah.
really does care about the scene. Obviously, this is my penultimate question. I want you to
Okay.
make an all-star team of all players you've ever teamed with in your career.
Ever teamed with or ever just period?
Ever teamed with. So you have to have teamed with him. So
Okay.
this is Mr. B's all-star team. You can include yourself if you have, because I've also done one
Well,
of
yeah,
your.
I
I've done
am
one of your
including
teams,
myself.
and I've included you.
Okay, I'm including myself as well.
Okay.
And is this me choosing them at their peak, or choosing them right now, or choosing them when I team with them, or
I'd say at their peak.
okay? If I could choose at their peak, I'm gonna choose. Can I say peak in comparison to like everyone else? Because the problem is I could go like there's players who I'm like this guy was insane at his peak in comparison to all the other players in the game, but like that level of play nowadays it would be like yeah whatever who cares, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think just at that time would be fair. Yeah.
Okay, okay. My first choice, Snake. Okay, I think Snake. When he was like, going towards like TSM and he was like grinding, coming off chess club, all that, and he like actually was passionate about the game, was in fucking insane. He's one of the most talented players I've ever seen, but he has like nowadays actually he has like just zero interest in like actually not interest. He isn't willing to put the time in. He isn't willing to like actually be passionate about the game. He doesn't have that passion in him. Like I don't know. It just yeah he couldn't do it anymore. But Snake's up there. All right, he's on my team. I get Gavin Insta. I get shit. I'm not realizing I actually don't want Snake. I'm actually I was like first I was really going like Snake, but I actually think
You've played with a lot of good
first
players. It is a really hard question.
yes. I actually think I probably just I do Gavin, and then I do Tristan as my like entry duo. I think they're like such an insane duo. I think if I don't do it Gavin Tristan, I'm probably trolling. And then I think. By the way, I'm not doing anybody for my current team. That I should have probably said that. I'm excluding them from being even potential candidates.
With the one I made, I did do someone from your current team, but that is because I'm the biggest glazer for them. So
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, no, I'm not doing anybody for my current team. Just for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think Gavin, Tristan, and then I would do Here's an interesting thing. I actually wouldn't take Packer at his peak, but I would potentially take Packer. But I definitely wouldn't take Packer right now, where I think he's at his peak, because I think it would cause issues and conflict, and not the good kind either necessarily. Fett is the coach, obviously, and then I would like. Can I take players of like? I'm gonna take. Can I take Gio? Am I allowed to take Gio as a player?
I'll allow it. I'll allow you as a player. I'll
Okay,
allow
I
it.
want Gio as my like secondary voice, second support. And then I want who's my like kind of flex entry? Uh, I might take Bryce as my last player. Yeah, Brios maybe.
Fair. I think he's a good player. I wouldn't
I know.
put it down.
I think Bryce is very underrated.
I
think
am
Bryce
surprised you
was
haven't picked a
fucking
player though.
insane. I definitely could have forgotten somebody.
So the team I picked was Gavini. We
Okay.
had the same, but that's the only player we had. Well, other than yourself, we had that the same, and the coach the same. But I picked Mike W because I'm Mike W's biggest fan. I did pick Packer in the end, and then I picked Gunner.
I would. No.
You want to pick Gunner?
No. Nah. I like Gunner. I like him a lot. I like him as a person. I think he's a solid player. But like, all time.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, we've hit the trial, so I've got my final question, and I am stealing this off a wrestling interview I actually watch, and he says that he's a big fan of gratitude. So, what are the 3 things in life that you are grateful for?
I'm incredibly grateful towards my friends and family. I think they've supported me a lot. Like, especially during this period where I've been, figuring out what I want to do with my life. Post Siege, because I put everything into Siege for like 8 years straight, right? I was very lost for a period, and I think they really helped me there. I am very grateful for the opportunities I've had and kind of my, I would say, I would say good fortune to an extent. I think I've had a lot of things not go my way, but it's all kind of ended up with me in the right places. And I'm not. This is not like a religious thing either. I'm not a religious person. I just think I'm grateful that I've been able to experience these things. There have been many periods of my life where I was like prior to being even in Challenger League where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to quit Siege, blah blah, blah, and then something happened and I was just able to like end up reaching. Even if I were to never make pro again, right? I've said this before. I'm so happy with everything I've been able to achieve. It's like it is such an amazing, cool thing that I've done, right? And I can look back on forever, right? I'm insanely grateful for that. And then what else am I grateful for? Friends, family, alcohol. I don't know. No. Goodness, I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm trying to rank them, but I think I'm gonna say I'm probably leave it at that for now. I think anything else, it's too conflicted with one another. But I'm really grateful towards just like the way things have worked out and towards my friends and family.
Well, thank you very much for giving me your time. That's 2 hours of your time wasted, not wasted, but
Worst.
being on this interview. It's been a lovely time chatting to you, and obviously,
yeah, thank you so much, man.
I messaged you on Twitter this after SI, but I really hope to see you on stage one day. That generally wasn't me being cheesy, it wasn't me glazing. I really want it to happen because I think you've put in the work, you've put in the time, and I think you'll eventually earn it for yourself.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for
I
watching.
appreciate you spending the time interviewing me.
Yeah, it's 6 a.m, so I'm probably gonna go to sleep, like instantly just knock out.
Wow.
Yeah, British time,
That's a rough one.
But
alrighty, well, sleep well, man.
Cheers, man. Hope you're having a good night. All right, thank you all for watching. I hope you all also have a great night. Bye-bye.